Well, I was trying to attract wildlife, but it looks like I attracted some chickens, which is just as good because the chickens need to eat some food anyways. I am going to show you how to support wildlife on your homestead, backyard, farm, wherever you live, even in the city. Some of the things I do can help you to attract wildlife. A lot of people say that they don't want wildlife on their property. I'm not one of those people. I love wildlife. My family loves to see the wildlife, so do I. Of course, there's times when I don't like wildlife, like if it gets my garden, but I have a hard enough time keeping my own animals, like my goats, my pigs, my chickens, my wife's horses, out of my garden areas. So I'm a little less worried about wildlife getting my food than my own pets, actually, or livestock. But I am going to show you a couple ways to increase the chances of having more wildlife on your property. The first one I'm showing you right here, and that is having bird houses, which I know that's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but that's something anyone can do. You can build them, you can buy them, you can make them with your kids. The thing I do is I try to have these near the, I guess, kitchen window, which is the first place I see in the morning when I'm making coffee. And then I have a few on other parts of the house so that if it gets too hot during the day, the birds like to stay in the shade and they like to rotate what feeders they go to. I like to mix up my feeder types, the types of seeds I have. I like to use those suet feeders as well. So if you have different types of feeders, you attract different types of birds. So of course that's a straightforward way to attract wildlife, but I'm going to show you a few that you may not have thought about. Here is the second way to attract wildlife to your property. This is less of a way and more of a reason to place a value on your wildlife, even if it's something small. There's small wildlife, micro wildlife, large animals that you could attract to your property. That is to place a value on it. So this is what we do. We have a wildlife book that basically anytime we see a new type of wildlife on our property, we write it down and we record it. The first year and a half that we lived here, we had a lot of sightings. We have seen deer, a coyote, my wife has seen foxes, we even saw a bobcat once, or twice. We've seen a bald eagle flying overhead, lots of hawks, lots and lots of birds. I know my basic birds, but there's some I don't know, so occasionally I just describe what the bird looked like. We've even seen herons here. We're about 1.5 miles from a small river, so we do occasionally see herons. But now that we've lived here a couple years, it's less and less common to see new wildlife, but when we do, we get excited, we mark it down, and we have fun with it. We have found several types of salamanders in the creek, a couple species of frogs and toads on the property. This is something else we do to place a value on our wildlife, is we have fun with our wildlife camera. I am not as good as I should be with putting this thing up. I either put it up for months and forget about it and the battery goes dead, or I put it up and the very next day I take it down because I'm too excited to be patient to see what wildlife is going to show up. But those are two ways to appreciate your wildlife. So bird houses and bird feeders is really important, and then two, place a value on the wildlife. So that is our teeny tiny little spring. It's definitely not a creek. If we get a lot of rainfall though, we can have several feet in our spring for about 1.5 days. This is where we get all of our salamanders from. If you have water on your property, then the third way to attract wildlife is to keep your water clean. So there's still people out in the country that like to dump stuff in creeks. They throw their trash on the edges. They don't really care. So if you want a happy habitat, having a nice clean stream is super, super important. If you have clean water, that's going to attract animals. We have lots of salamanders. That is a #1 sign of a healthy creek, at least in the mountains of North Carolina where we have so many salamanders. So keep your creek clean if you got it, and you'll have much more wildlife if you can do that. So way number 4 is don't cut your grass. Now I know you're probably saying, there's no way I'm going to let my grass get like this. This is crazy. Your neighbors are going to be mad at you, but if they get mad at you, just say, hey, I'm supporting wildlife right now. We do need to cut this grass, but I hate cutting grass, I'll tell you that. And I am doing this soon, but if you can find a section of your property where you just don't mow, you can make a mini prairie. These wildflowers are going to pollinate a lot of more flowers, and they're also going to attract a lot of pollinators, a lot of insects, some birds, and this provides habitat for a lot of other animals like box turtles, snakes, frogs. I know people don't want mice on the property, but mice would also live in here. But if you have a good farm cat, you don't have to worry about mice. So if you can find a part of your property that you just leave alone, that's a great way to have a micro habitat for wildlife. And you don't have to mow your grass as often, which is always a good thing. The 5th and final way for right now to attract wildlife to your property is to have some wildlife trees. So not every tree on your property can be food for you unless you have a small backyard, but it can be food for other animals. So this here is a plum tree. In the winter time, when birds can't find anything else to eat, they will come and they will eat these dried plums. If we haven't harvested them, they're really small and they don't really taste that good, but the birds love them. So if you can get a wildlife tree, that is a great thing. I'm going to point out a few more of our wildlife trees real quick. In the background here we have a walnut tree, and of course lots of animals love to eat walnuts. And if you live in an area where you can grow walnut trees, it's a great wildlife tree, and they're also beautiful. They provide a lot of shade in the summer and fall. We also up here have some crab apple trees. There's another tree, I'm not sure what it is, but the birds love it. The chickens actually will fly up here and eat these berries if it's the right time of year. And it's another great way to support wildlife. So thanks again for joining us, and hopefully in the future I will have some more ways to support your local wildlife, and we'll make a video about it.